On September 14th, 1984, Carl Dunning made his final inspection of the Bryce Grain Elevator at 4:47 p.m. He signed the maintenance log, noted the humidity at acceptable levels, and locked the east service door behind him. At 11:23 p.m., the elevator exploded. The fireball was visible from 18 miles away. Grain dust ignition, the county fire marshal ruled. Case closed in 9 days. But the marshal's report didn't explain why the explosion originated in an empty storage bin that hadn't held grain in 7 months. It didn't explain why the sprinkler system had been manually disabled 3 days before the fire. And it didn't explain why Carl Dunning's truck was found 40 miles away, engine still warm, with Carl nowhere to be found. Howard Vance had investigated insurance claims for Regional Mutual for 22 years. Barn fires, equipment theft, livestock losses, Kansas farmers trying to squeeze money from policies they'd paid into for decades. He understood the math of desperation. The Bryce Grain Elevator claim landed on his desk 3 weeks after the fire. $2.4 million. The largest claim Regional Mutual had seen in the state since 1971. He spread the photographs across his motel room bed in Wakeeney. The elevator had been 112 feet tall. Now it was a crater surrounded by twisted metal and scorched concrete. The fire marshal's report was thin. 16 pages for a $2 million loss. Vance circled the phrase, grain dust ignition, and wrote in the margin, which grain? The Bryce Grain Elevator had been owned by the Bryce family since 1946. 3 generations of storing wheat, corn, and sorghum for farmers across Trego County. Howard Vance drove the 2-lane highway from Wakeeney to the site, passing fields of stubble where the harvest had already come through. The crater was larger than the photographs suggested. Vance parked on the access road and walked the perimeter, his shoes crunching on debris that had scattered 200 yards in every direction. The concrete foundation had cracked in a radial pattern. He'd seen enough grain dust explosions to know they didn't crack foundations. They blew outward. This one had blown down first. He photographed the crack pattern with his Polaroid, waiting for each image to develop in the September heat. The Bryce family home sat a quarter mile from where the elevator had stood. A 2-story farmhouse with white paint peeling in the Kansas wind. Vance knocked on the screen door and waited. Martha Bryce answered. She was 63 according to the policy records. She looked older.
You're the insurance man?
Howard Vance, ma'am. Regional Mutual. I'm sorry for your loss.
My husband built that elevator with his father. 40 years it stood there.
I understand your son Dale filed the claim.
Dale handles the business now. Has for 5 years. You want to talk to him? He's at the bank in Wakeeney.
She didn't invite him in, didn't offer coffee. Just stood behind the screen door like she was waiting for him to leave.
Mr. Vance, I've been expecting you.
I have some questions about the night of the fire.
Of course. Anything to expedite the claim. We've got farmers depending on that elevator.
Where were you at 11:23 p.m. on September 14th?
Home. Asleep. My wife can confirm.
And Carl Dunning?
Something shifted behind Dale's eyes, just for a moment.
Carl's a mystery to all of us. Man worked here 15 years, never missed a day. Then he just vanished.
Vance spent the afternoon at the county recorder's office, pulling records on the Bryce Grain Elevator. The building had been inspected in March, passed with minor citations. The business had been profitable through 1982. Then the numbers dropped. Grain prices fell. Farmers started using the co-op elevator in Hayes instead. The policy had been increased in June. Dale Bryce had raised the coverage from $1.6 million to $2.4 million. The premium increase was substantial. The paperwork was signed 3 months before the fire. Vance made copies of everything. The clerk, a woman named Dottie who'd worked there since the Johnson administration, watched him feed nickels into the machine.
Terrible thing about that elevator. My husband used to haul wheat there.
Did he know Carl Dunning?
Everybody knew Carl. Quiet man, kept to himself. Had that trailer out past the Hendricks place.
Carl Dunning's trailer sat at the end of a dirt road that hadn't seen a grader in years. Single wide, rust streaking down from the roof. Vance parked beside the propane tank and walked to the door. No one answered his knock. The curtains were drawn. He walked around back and found the power meter. It hadn't moved since the county read it in August. The neighbor, an old man named Hendricks, watched from his porch 200 yards away. Vance walked over.
You looking for Carl?
When did you last see him?
Night of the fire. Saw his truck heading out around 10. Figured he was going to check the elevator. He did that sometimes.
Did he come back?
Don't know. I went to bed. Woke up when I heard the explosion. Never saw Carl after that.
He have any family?
Sister in Nebraska somewhere. Never visited.
The fire marshal's office was in the basement of the Trego County Courthouse. Marshal Pete Holloway was a large man who'd been doing the job since 1969. He didn't seem pleased to see Vance.
I already filed my report.
I read it. You ruled grain dust ignition.
That's what it was.
The explosion originated in Bin 7. According to the maintenance logs, Bin 7 hadn't stored grain since February.
Residual dust. It accumulates.
For 7 months? In an empty bin?
Holloway leaned back in his chair. The springs creaked.
Mr. Vance, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what a grain dust explosion looks like.
Then you know they don't crack foundations. They blow walls outward.
Every fire's different. Maintenance issue. Been offline for weeks.
Vance drove back to the motel as the sun set over the plains. He ate a hamburger at the diner next door and spread his notes across the table. The policy increase bothered him. The disabled sprinklers bothered him. The empty bin bothered him most of all. But what kept circling back was Carl Dunning. A man who'd worked at the elevator for 15 years, made his last inspection at 4:47 p.m., and then vanished into thin air. The waitress refilled his coffee.
You the insurance man?
Word travels fast.
Small town. You find Carl yet?
Not yet. You know him?
He came in every Tuesday for the meatloaf special. Nice man. Tipped good.
She hesitated, coffee pot hovering.
He stopped coming in about a month before the fire. I figured he was sick or something.
Vance called his supervisor from the motel room phone. Regional Mutual's home office was in Topeka, 3 hours east.
Howard, how's it looking?
Complicated. The fire marshal's report doesn't hold up. I've got an empty bin that supposedly caused the explosion, disabled sprinklers, and a missing employee.
Missing how?
His truck was found 40 miles away the night of the fire. No one's seen him since.
Could be he set the fire and ran.
Could be. But why would a maintenance man who's worked there 15 years suddenly commit arson?
People do strange things for money.
That's what I intend to find out.
You've got 2 weeks, Howard. Then we need to make a determination.
The next morning, Vance drove to Hayes to talk to the competition. The Midwest Grain Cooperative had been taking business from Bryce for 3 years. Their elevator was newer, bigger, better positioned near the railroad. The manager was a woman named Ruth Weaver. She had a corner office with a view of the loading docks.
Terrible thing about the Bryce elevator. Dale's father was a good man.
But not Dale?
I didn't say that.
You didn't have to. How much business did you take from them?
30% of their volume over the last 3 years, maybe more. We've got better rail access.
Was the Bryce operation in financial trouble?
I don't know their books, but I know they had loans coming due. Everybody in the business knew that.
Vance spent the afternoon at the Trego County Sheriff's Office, reviewing the missing persons report on Carl Dunning. It was thin. 2 pages. Filed by the fire marshal's office, not by any family member. The deputy who took the report was named Dwyer. Young, maybe 25, with a mustache he was still growing into.
We put out a bolo on his truck. Found it the next morning at a rest stop on I-70.
Any fingerprints?
Just Carl's. Keys were in the ignition. Tank was almost empty.
Like someone drove it there and walked away.
Or got picked up by someone else.
You checked the bus stations? Train stations?
Checked everything. Nobody saw him. It's like he just disappeared.
Vance studied the photograph attached to the file. Carl Dunning was 54, with a weathered face and gray hair cut short. He looked like every other farmer in Kansas. Vance drove back to Wakeeney and stopped at the grain elevator site again. The cleanup crew had started work, hauling twisted metal into dump trucks. A foreman in a hard hat waved him over.
You're the insurance guy. Found anything interesting? Depends what you mean by interesting. We pulled this out of the rubble this morning.
He handed Vance a scorched metal canister, about the size of a coffee can. One end was blown open, the metal peeled back like a flower.
What is it? Hell if I know. Wasn't any grain equipment I recognize. Found it near where bin 7 used to be.
Vance turned the canister over in his hands. The metal was thick, industrial. This wasn't something you'd find in a grain elevator.
Mind if I take this? It's all going to the scrapyard anyway.
The canister sat on Vance's motel room desk like an accusation. He photographed it from every angle, measured it, made sketches. The metal was too thick for any agricultural purpose he could think of. He called a friend in Kansas City. Jerry Roth had spent 20 years in the Army before becoming an investigator for another insurance company.
Describe it again.
Steel cylinder, about 8 inches tall, 4 inches diameter. One end blown completely open. The metal's at least 1/4 inch thick.
Sounds like a pressure vessel. Maybe a small propane tank.
It's not a propane tank. I've seen thousands of those. This is different.
Send me a photo. I know a guy at Fort Riley who might be able to identify it.
Military?
Howard, a 1/4 inch steel cylinder that explodes? That's not farming equipment.
The next morning, Vance returned to the Bryce farmhouse. This time, Martha Bryce invited him in. The house smelled like coffee and something baking. She sat him at the kitchen table.
Dale called. Said you've been asking questions all over town.
That's my job, Mrs. Bryce.
You think we burned down our own elevator.
I think there are things about this fire that don't add up.
Like what?
Like why Carl Dunning disappeared the same night. Like why the sprinklers were disabled. Like why the explosion came from an empty bin.
Martha's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee.
Carl was a troubled man. We didn't know how troubled until he did what he did.
What did he do, Mrs. Bryce?
He burned us out. Isn't that obvious?
Vance spent the afternoon tracking down Carl Dunning's sister in Nebraska. Her name was Evelyn Pruitt, and she lived in a small town outside Lincoln. He reached her by phone.
I haven't heard from Carl in 6 months. We weren't close.
When did you last see him?
Easter. He drove up for dinner. Seemed different.
Different how?
Nervous. Kept looking out the window like he was expecting someone. I asked if he was in trouble. He said no, but I didn't believe him.
Did he mention anything about work? About the Bryce family?
He said he'd found something he wasn't supposed to find. Said it was going to change everything. I thought he was being dramatic.
Did he say what he found?
No, and now I wish I'd asked.
The photograph arrived from Jerry Roth 3 days later. It showed a similar canister, intact, sitting on a military workbench. The caption typed beneath it read, M18A1 Claymore Initiator Housing, Training Aid. Vance read the accompanying letter twice. The canister he'd found wasn't a complete device. It was a component, part of a triggering mechanism for military explosives. He drove to the county library and spent 4 hours with military surplus catalogs and technical manuals. The M18A1 Claymore was an anti-personnel mine. The initiator housing was the part that held the blasting cap. Someone had used military-grade explosives to destroy the Bryce Grain Elevator. Vance sat in the library parking lot and smoked a cigarette. This wasn't insurance fraud anymore. This was something else entirely. Vance drove to the sheriff's office and asked to speak with the sheriff himself. Earl Combs was 62 years old and had held the position for 16 years. He listened to Vance's findings without expression.
You're saying someone used a military explosive to blow up a grain elevator?
I'm saying I found a component consistent with military ordnance at the blast site.
And you think this relates to Carl Dunning's disappearance?
I think Carl Dunning found something he wasn't supposed to find. His sister said as much.
Combs leaned back in his chair and studied Vance for a long moment.
Mr. Vance, I've known the Bryce family for 40 years. Dale's father was a good man. Dale has his troubles, but he's not a murderer.
I didn't say he was.
You didn't have to. I can see where this is heading.
Dale Bryce was waiting in the motel parking lot when Vance returned that evening. He was leaning against a pickup truck, arms crossed.
You've been telling people I blew up my own elevator.
I've been asking questions. That's different.
The fire marshal ruled it an accident. The case is closed.
The case isn't closed until Regional Mutual says it's closed.
$2.4 million. That's what we're owed. That's what we're going to get.
Not if the fire was deliberately set.
Dale stepped closer, close enough that Vance could smell the whiskey on his breath.
You need to be careful, Mr. Vance. This is a small town. People don't like outsiders stirring up trouble.
Is that a threat?
It's advice. Take it or leave it.
Vance couldn't sleep that night. He sat by the window, watching the parking lot, half expecting Dale's truck to return. At 2 a.m., he gave up and spread his notes across the bed. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit together yet. Dale Bryce had motive. The business was failing. The insurance had been increased. But military explosives? That was a significant escalation from simple arson. And then there was Carl Dunning, a maintenance man who'd found something he wasn't supposed to find. A man who'd been nervous for months before the fire. A man whose truck was found 40 miles away with the keys in the ignition. Vance wrote 2 words on his notepad and circled them. Why military? The answer to that question would change everything. Morning brought a phone call from Jerry Roth in Kansas City.
Howard, I showed that photo to my contact at Fort Riley. He had some interesting things to say.
I'm listening.
That initiator housing? It's not current military issue. It's surplus. Been showing up at gun shows and military surplus stores for about 5 years.
So anyone could buy one.
Anyone with cash and no questions asked. But here's the thing. The housing by itself is useless. You need the detonator, the blasting cap, the explosive charge. That's all controlled material.
Unless you know someone who can get it.
Exactly. Your elevator bomber either has military connections or knows someone who does.
Vance thanked Jerry and hung up. Then he pulled out the Trigo County phone book and started looking for veterans organizations. The American Legion post in Wakeeney was a low building on the edge of town. Vance arrived at noon and found a handful of men playing cards in the back room. The bartender was a one-armed Korean War veteran named Mel.
Looking for someone specific?
Information, mostly. You know the Bryce family?
Everybody knows the Bryce family. Old man Bryce was a member here for 30 years. Dale, too, until he stopped coming around.
When was that?
Couple years back. Around the time he started having money trouble.
Dale served?
National Guard. Never deployed. His daddy pulled strings to keep him stateside during Vietnam.
Anyone here who might know about military surplus? Explosives?
Mel's expression hardened.
Mister, if you're asking what I think you're asking, you should know better.
Vance was walking back to his car when one of the card players caught up with him in the parking lot. An older man with a limp and a face like cracked leather.
You're the insurance man.
That's right.
I heard what you asked Mel in there about explosives.
And?
There's a man named Harlan Gist, lives out past the old ammunition plant, does custom welding, metalwork. People say he can get things.
What kind of things?
Things that go boom. I'm not saying he had anything to do with the elevator. I'm just saying, if someone wanted that kind of equipment around here, they'd probably talk to Harlan.
Why are you telling me this?
Because Carl Dunning was a friend of mine, and I don't believe he ran off.
Harlan Gist's property was 5 miles outside of town, down a road that turned from gravel to dirt to 2 ruts through tall grass. The house was a converted barn surrounded by rusting equipment and sheet metal sculptures. Gist himself was in his 60s, with a white beard and hands stained permanently black with grease. He didn't seem surprised to see Vance.
You're the insurance man everybody's talking about. Word travels fast. In a town like this, word travels before you do. What do you want? I want to know if you sold any military surplus equipment to Dale Bryce.
Gist's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eye.
I sell scrap metal, welding supplies, farm equipment, and detonators. Get off my property.
Vance drove back to town thinking about Harlan Gist's reaction. The man hadn't denied selling anything. He'd just told Vance to leave. That was almost an admission. He stopped at the diner for coffee and found Deputy Dwyer waiting for him in a booth.
Mr. Vance, Sheriff wanted me to have a word with you.
About what?
About Harlan Gist. He called the office after you left. Said you were harassing him.
I asked him a question. He told me to leave. I left.
Sheriff says you should stick to insurance matters and leave the police work to us.
Is that what the sheriff says?
That's what he says.
Dwyer looked uncomfortable, like he was delivering a message he didn't believe in.
Tell the sheriff I appreciate his concern.
That night, Vance's motel room was broken into while he was at dinner. Nothing was taken, but his notes had been rifled through. The photographs were scattered. The metal canister was gone. He reported it to the front desk. The clerk, a teenage girl with braces, said she hadn't seen anyone.
I was watching TV in the back. Sorry, mister.
Vance spent an hour reconstructing his notes from memory. The canister was gone, but he still had the photographs he'd taken. He still had Jerry Roth's letter identifying what it was. Someone was getting nervous. Someone who knew exactly what that canister meant. He slept with a chair propped against the door and his car keys in his hand. The next morning, Vance drove to the old ammunition plant. It had been closed since 1969, a sprawling complex of concrete buildings surrounded by chain-link fence topped with rusted barbed wire. Signs warned of trespassing, but the fence had been cut in multiple places. He walked to the perimeter, taking photographs. The buildings were gutted, stripped of anything valuable years ago, but the concrete bunkers where they'd stored the explosives were still intact, and one of them had fresh tire tracks leading to its door. Vance photographed the tracks, then followed them inside. The bunker was empty now, but the floor was cleaner than it should have been. Someone had been using this space recently. In the corner, he found a receipt. Faded but readable. Bryce Grain Elevator, maintenance supplies, $847.50. Dated August 3rd, 1984. Vance sat in his car outside the ammunition plant, staring at the receipt. August 3rd, 6 weeks before the fire. Carl Dunning had been here, buying something that cost $847.50 and was listed as maintenance supplies. Except Carl Dunning didn't have purchasing authority. According to the company records, only Dale Bryce could authorize purchases over $500. Vance drove to the county clerk's office and pulled the business registration for Bryce Grain Elevator. Dale Bryce, owner. Martha Bryce, secretary. Carl Dunning wasn't listed anywhere. Then he pulled the vehicle registrations. Dale Bryce owned a pickup truck and a sedan. Martha Bryce owned a station wagon. Carl Dunning's truck was registered to Bryce Grain Elevator, Inc. Vance circled that detail 3 times. That evening, Vance drove back to Hendrick's place, the neighbor who'd seen Carl Dunning leave the night of the fire. The old man was sitting on his porch, watching the sun set over the empty fields.
You again? I have one more question, Mr. Hendricks. The night Carl left, did you see which direction he went?
East, toward the interstate.
Not toward the elevator.
No, the elevator's north. He went east.
Did you tell the fire marshal that?
He never asked.
Vance thanked him and walked back to his car. Carl Dunning had left at 10 p.m., heading away from the elevator. The explosion happened at 11:23 p.m. If Carl set the fire, he would have had to drive 40 miles to the rest stop, then somehow get back to the elevator to set the device, then disappear. The timeline didn't work. Carl Dunning didn't set the fire. Vance called his supervisor from a payphone outside the diner. He didn't trust the motel phone anymore.
Howard, I've been getting calls. The Bryce family's lawyer is threatening to sue for delay of payment.
Let him sue. I've got evidence of fraud.
What kind of evidence?
Military-grade explosives were used to destroy the elevator. The missing employee didn't set the fire. He was eliminated because he found out about it. And I've got a receipt tying the Bryce operation to the old ammunition plant where the explosives were likely stored.
Jesus, Howard, this is way beyond insurance fraud.
I know. But I can prove the claim is fraudulent. That's all Regional Mutual needs to deny payment.
How much longer do you need?
Give me 3 more days.
Vance spent the next day building his case. He photographed everything: the crater, the tire tracks at the ammunition plant, the receipt, his own reconstructed notes. He made copies of the county records and mailed them to Jerry Roth in Kansas City for safekeeping. Then he visited the waitress at the diner who'd mentioned Carl Dunning stopping his Tuesday visits.
You're still here.
Almost done. You said Carl stopped coming in a month before the fire. Did he say why?
No. But the last time I saw him, he looked scared. Like he'd seen a ghost.
Did he say anything unusual?
Just one thing. He said he wished he'd never looked in that bunker.
Vance felt the pieces click into place.
Did he say which bunker?
No. I figured he meant one of the bins at the elevator. But now I'm not so sure.
Vance returned to the ammunition plant with a flashlight and a camera. The bunker with the tire tracks had been empty before. This time, he searched more carefully. In the back corner, behind a rusted shelving unit, he found a canvas bag. Inside were work gloves, a timing device with wires attached, and a photograph. The photograph showed Carl Dunning standing next to a stack of wooden crates. The crates were stenciled with military markings. In the background, clearly visible, was Dale Bryce. Vance turned the photograph over. On the back, in Carl's handwriting, insurance policy, August 5th, 1984. Carl Dunning had known what was coming. He'd taken this photograph as protection, and someone had made sure he never got to use it. Vance drove straight to the sheriff's office with the photograph. Sheriff Combs was gone for the day, but Deputy Dwyer was at the desk.
Mr. Vance, it's after hours.
Look at this.
He laid the photograph on the desk. Dwyer studied it for a long moment.
Where did you get this?
The ammunition plant. Same place those military explosives came from. That's Carl Dunning, the missing man. And that's Dale Bryce, standing next to crates of what I'm guessing is stolen military ordnance.
This doesn't prove anything.
It proves Carl Dunning knew what Dale was doing. It proves he documented it. And it proves someone had a very good reason to make sure Carl disappeared.
Dwyer's hand was shaking slightly as he picked up the photograph.
I need to show this to the sheriff.
That's exactly what I'm hoping you'll do.
The next morning, Vance found Sheriff Combs waiting in the motel parking lot. The sheriff's expression was unreadable.
Deputy Dwyer showed me that photograph.
And?
And I spent last night having a very difficult conversation with Dale Bryce.
What did he say?
He said Carl Dunning was blackmailing him. Said Carl found out about some business dealings and threatened to go to the authorities unless Dale paid him off.
And you believe him?
I believe Dale Bryce is scared. I believe he's been lying to me for weeks. And I believe you've uncovered something that goes beyond a grain elevator fire.
So what happens now?
Now I call the state police. Because if Carl Dunning was murdered, this isn't a Trigo County matter anymore.
Vance sat in his motel room, watching the state police cars arrive through the window. 3 of them, plus an unmarked sedan. They went to the Bryce farmhouse first, then to the ammunition plant. His phone rang.
Vance.
Howard, what the hell is happening out there? I'm getting calls from the Kansas Bureau of Investigation.
The claim is fraudulent. Dale Bryce used military explosives to destroy his own elevator, and he probably killed his maintenance man to cover it up.
Probably.
They haven't found the body yet, but they will.
Jesus Christ. And the claim?
Denied. I'm writing it up now. Fraud, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder.
This is going to be a mess.
It already is.
Vance drove to the Bryce farmhouse that afternoon. State police had Dale in custody, but Martha was still there, sitting on the porch with 2 officers nearby. She looked up as Vance approached. Her face had aged 10 years since he'd first met her.
You must be satisfied.
Mrs. Bryce, I'm just doing my job.
Your job. My husband built that elevator. My son destroyed it. And now you've destroyed everything else.
Dale destroyed it. I just found the evidence.
Carl Dunning was a good man. He didn't deserve what happened to him.
No, he didn't. Where's the body, Mrs. Bryce?
She looked at him for a long moment, then pointed toward the north field.
Under the old windmill foundation. Dale thought no one would ever look there.
He found Carl Dunning's body that evening. He'd been shot twice in the chest with a .38 caliber revolver, the same caliber as the gun registered to Dale Bryce. Vance watched from his car as they loaded the body bag into the coroner's van. 23 years Carl had worked at that elevator. 15 years he'd known what kind of man Dale Bryce really was, and when he finally tried to do something about it, it had cost him everything. Deputy Dwyer walked over, looking pale.
Mr. Vance, the sheriff wanted me to thank you.
For what?
For not giving up. We would have closed this case. The fire marshal already had. You're the only one who kept asking questions.
It's my job.
It's more than that, and we both know it.
Vance typed his final report in the motel room that night. 17 pages documenting every piece of evidence, every inconsistency, every lie that had unraveled into murder. The phone rang at midnight. He picked up, expecting his supervisor.
You got what you wanted, insurance man.
Mr. Gist.
Dale Bryce came to me 6 months ago. Said he needed something that could make a fire look like an accident. I told him I didn't deal in that kind of thing.
But you knew someone who did.
I knew where the old Army surplus was stored. That's all I knew. What Dale did with it was his business.
Why are you telling me this?
Because Carl Dunning was a decent man. And somebody should know the whole truth.
The line went dead. Vance left Wakeeney on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after he'd arrived. The sky was clear, the fields golden with unharvested wheat. The Bryce Grain Elevator was still a crater by the side of the road. Dale Bryce had been charged with arson, insurance fraud, and first-degree murder. His trial would be in Topeka, away from the town that had known his family for 3 generations. The insurance claim was denied. $2.4 million that would never be paid. Vance stopped at the diner one last time for coffee. The waitress brought it without being asked.
You heading out?
Back to Topeka. Got another claim waiting.
Will you be back for the trial?
Probably. I'm the main witness.
She nodded, refilled his cup, and walked away. Outside, the Kansas wind blew dust across the empty parking lot. The elevator crater stood silent against the horizon, Some fires burn everything down. Some just reveal what was already broken.